like to call the Village Board meeting for Tuesday, May 26, 2026 to order. Roll call, please.
Trustee Service? Here. Trustee Paul?
Here.
Trustee Zerbal? Trustee Atkinson?
Here.
Trustee Krieger?
Here.
Trustee Telford?
Here.
President Curtis?
Here. Please stand if you can for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And please remember our men and women throughout the world in uniform. I have no changes to the agenda. I need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 5, comments from the public during the public comment period and pursuant to Wisconsin statute section 19.84 parent 2. Individuals must state their name and address. Your comments are limited to items not on the agenda. Comments are limited to 5 minutes. Personnel issues cannot be discussed nor individuals named. The board's role is to listen and receive information from the public, and the board is not able to take action at this meeting. Is there anybody who would like to comment on items not on tonight's agenda? State your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm Rick Van Lannen, 2673 Pioneer Drive, Brown County Board Supervisor for District 22, which includes Ashwaubenon wards 9 through 12 and Town of Lawrence wards 1 through 4 and 7. I just have a few things. First, I want to thank the police, fire, and first responders for their great work from this about a week and a half ago with all the events that were happening with the concerts and the dart tournaments and the epic marathon. They do a great job keeping everybody safe. So thank you for all their great work. Just wanted to let people know that I'm honored to been selected as vice chairman of our administration committee. John Van Dyke will be our chairman. So I appreciate the unanimous decision on that, and thank you. I think we have a great administration committee, so we should be able to do some good work for the county and the residents. Got an update from our county clerk, Patrick Moynihan, who's Ashwaubenon grad, and we're lucky to have him as our county clerk. He had mentioned that 2025 election percentage was 60.2%, and the 2026 was 40.2%, so we're down from the year before. So hopefully, in the fall and in future elections, people, get out and vote. So that's very important. There's an update from the DOJ that the ADA, American Disabilities Act, our web content for the compliance has been pushed back to April of 2027. So we have some more time on that, but we're diligently working on that site to make sure it's ADA compliant. And finally, just to put a plug in, the Nativity of Our Lord Parish right here in Ashwaubenon has their annual picnic, church picnic, June 14th. So welcome everybody to go out and have some food and a beverage and maybe buy some tickets to win a car or get some cash. So that's all I have. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Zeke Probelski. I'm the Brown County I live at 2455 Bay Area Place. I'm the Brown County Supervisor for District 21, which is a greater part of Ashwaubenon, wards 1 through 8. Quick update on our coal piles. We finally got C. Rice Coal Company to come to the table, and after they violated a couple of our drop dead dates, and we finished up so we wouldn't have to go into binding arbitration, and we're all squared away in our coal piles and when they're moving and so forth. Being a part of the Planning, Development, and Transportation Committee, our highway department said there's a couple of our bridges that were washed out during our rain this past couple of weeks, and we're applying for aid to get those bridges. Nothing major, minor bridges, but they are washed out, and we're going to be getting some money for that. And last of all, I'd like to give a shout out to Hy-Vee. Last Tuesday, Mary and I had the privilege of attending a veterans breakfast over at Hy-Vee. And we got to meet and greet quite a few of the veterans and their spouses and a couple of their family members. It was a great time. I believe we served somewhere around 100 veterans and their spouses and some family members. Did a great job. One of the things they had is at the greeting desk, they had a picture or had a world map set up so all the veterans could come in and put a stick pin where they served in the world. And they got a super, they did great on that. I think they had more fun than that than the actual breakfast itself. So special shout out to Hy-Vee. Support Hy-Vee because they're in, Bay Park Square and they're part of our community. So that's all I have. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments for items not on tonight's agenda? Okay, moving on. Number 6, written communications or announcements. 6A, citizen recognition of Randy Quaintence and Whitney Stanek for heroic acts. Chief.
Thanks to the village board for allowing us to recognize. We had 2 citizens that were going to be handing out life-saving awards for their actions in November of last year. So if I could please have Randy Quaintence and Whitney Stanek come to the front, please. On November 17th, 2025, Public Safety was dispatched to a local business for a patient who went unresponsive prior to a job interview. Randy was actually on site conducting an audit, like a safety audit of the business, and Whitney was getting ready to perform an interview with an interview panel. They recognized that a medical emergency was occurring. They recognized that a person that came in to actually interview for the position was not breathing, so they just had to start CPR. They also placed an AED on the patient. With their CPR and AED efforts, they delivered 3 different shocks to the patient prior to EMS arrival. When the Ashwaubenon EMS arrived on scene, they utilized the cardiac monitor on the patient, which showed an organized heart rhythm and corresponding pulse. While this was occurring, crew members also secured the patient's airway and provided oxygen. Cardiac medications were provided via IV, and the patient was monitored, transported to the hospital. The patient was discharged from the hospital 3 weeks after the incident. We had 4 out-of-hospital cardiac arrests last year. So we actually had a lot of life-saving awards that we handed out to our officers and a couple citizens that were in the community at the time. It's like survival of out-of-hospital cardiac arrest is less than 10%. So your actions that day saved a human, and they're able to get on with life because of your actions. So what you did was excellent in shifting gears from an interview or a safety audit and then going right into CPR and saving someone's life. I mean, that requires quick thinking, so congratulations. Congratulations. There you are, sir. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Okay, 6B, oath of office for our new public safety officer.
All right, I'd like to introduce you to Officer Aspen Powell, badge number 784. If you could come up to the front, please. All right, this is Aspen Powell. She attended Northeast Wisconsin Technical College and earned her associate's degree in the spring of 2022. Aspen started with Ashwaubenon Public Safety in December 9th of 2025. Completed the field training program on April 6th, 2026. Prior to Aspen's employment with our department, she worked for the Brown County Jail, Juvenile Detention Center, and with the Lena Police Department for approximately 3 years. Aspen will complete the required EMT and fire certification training in the near future, and we are thankful to have Aspen join our team. So we're gonna do the oath of office. This is your copy if you just wanna follow along. All right, raise your right hand. I, Aspen Powell,
I, Aspen Powell,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
to the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservations or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservations or purpose of evasion,
and I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
and I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
of the Office of Public Safety Officer for the Village of Ashwaubenon.
of the office
Public Safety
of Public
Officer,
Safety Officer for the Village of Ashwaubenon,
acting to the best of my ability.
acting to the best of my ability.
All right. Congratulations. You could have your husband Ethan come up, do the badge pinning. There you are. Welcome to the team. Thank you, Village Board.
Welcome. Okay, moving on to number 7, public hearings. Public hearing on ordinance 05-2-26, rezoning part of parcel VA-L360-6 from R1 one-family residence district to B1 local business district located at 1280 West Main Avenue. Aaron?
All right, thank you. I will share my screen to bring up the map. Okay. So the requested public hearing, as noted, is for requested rezoning of the front 149.5 feet of the subject parcel at the corner of Sandy Acres and West Main Avenue. The rezoning is to go from R1, one-family residence, to B1, local business, for purposes of a office, a business office and garage, along with potential future development as well. The back 90 feet will remain in an R1 zoning for a new home development.
Okay. Is there anybody that would like to speak for or against this project? Or rezoning, I'm sorry. Is there anybody who would like to speak for or against this project? One more time, is there anybody who would like to speak for or against this project? Okay, I need a motion to close the hearing.
So move.
Second?
Motion and a second to close public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Motion carried. Number 8, action on consent agenda. A, consider, discuss, act on the village board meeting minutes of April 28, 2026. B, receive and accept the April 2026 village fund financial reports. C, receive and accept the April 2026 investment report. D, consider, discuss, act on 2026-2027 retail alcohol license renewals. E, consider, discuss, act on a regular Class B beer, Class C wine license for Gable Holdings, LLC, DBA Hoo-Hot Mongolian Grill. F, consider, discuss, act on temporary alcohol outside premise extension for PMI Entertainment Group, Inc., DBA Rush Center. G, consider, discuss, act on the budgeted expenditures for periods between 4/23/2026 to 5/19/2026. H, receive and accept the May 2026 Public Works Department report. I, receive and accept the May 2026 Park, Rec, and Forestry Department reports. J, consider, discuss, act on Brown County Intergovernmental 2026-2027 property tax bill agreement. And K, consider, discuss, act on an agricultural lease agreement between the Village of Ashwaubenon and Ralph Callaway for parcel VA 184-A-1. Is there anything anybody would like to have pulled for discussion, or I need a motion to approve?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Motion carried. Number 9A, consider, discuss, act on an ordinance 05-1-26, amending section 240 helmets of chapter 7, traffic and vehicles, article 7, bicycles, motorbikes, and similar vehicles. Joel.
Thank you, Madam President. So this ordinance is a real quick cleanup provision within Chapter 7, Article 7 related to bicycles, motorbikes, and similar vehicles. You may recall a little over a year ago, the village adopted a revised code that required children under the age of 16 to wear a helmet while using or operating a bicycle or similar vehicle. Within that code, we identified specific standards that would need to be met for those helmets to qualify under the provision within code. It was brought to our attention through public safety that the provisions that we identified, whether it be through the ASTM or ANSI code or under the Snell Bicycle Foundation code, if you will, or guideline, that oftentimes helmets that are purchased on the market are not necessarily easily identifiable. So under federal law, all bicycle helmets need to meet a minimum federal standard for them to qualify. And so the provision within code basically strikes the Snell Foundation and the ANSI standard and adopts the federal standard. By doing that, all helmets that are being used, whether it be in the Village of Ashwaubenon or sold on the marketplace, would be required to be stamped by the CPSC standard 1203, which would then make it very easily identifiable by public safety that they have met those minimum standards. As I mentioned, the other standards don't require that stamping, and so they're really hard to identify by public safety to determine whether or not they meet the standard under our code. So again, this doesn't necessarily eliminate the safety provisions that we had previously identified and adopted within the code. It just makes it easier for public safety to understand when they were to evaluate whether a helmet met the standard, that it does in fact meet that standard by that federal mandated stamping. With that, I'll answer any questions.
So if a kid is wearing a helmet that doesn't have that stamp on it, what are we doing with it?
So it would follow the enforcement provisions within that chapter. So it does require notification to the parent. So generally speaking, it's a warning. After several warnings, there may be a citation. That citation is actually issued to the parent versus to the child. And so it would just follow that standard enforcement provision for bicycle helmets as outlined in the code.
All right, I'll make the motion to adopt ordinance 05-1-26, amending section 240 of chapter 7, traffic and vehicles, article 7, bicycles, motorbikes, and similar vehicles.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 05-1-26. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Motion carried. 9B, consider, discuss, act, ordinance 05-2-26, rezoning part of parcel VA-L360-6 from R1 One Family Residence District to B1 Local Business District located at 1280 West Main Avenue. This was just the public hearing. If anybody has questions, Aaron is available.
I guess, Aaron, my only question I asked before, have we contacted that one resident on Main? Because that's the only one to be concerned with, because that's the only single family on that road. Everything else is all business at this point.
Yeah, all property owners within 200 feet of the potential rezoning were notified via mail, so they were notified.
Okay. Anybody want to entertain a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve ordinance 05-2-26 rezoning part and parcel VA-L 360-6 from R1 one-family resident district to B1 local business district located at 1280 West Main Avenue.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 05-2-26. Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 9C, consider discuss act on resolution R 5-1-26 urging the state of Wisconsin to enact comprehensive and sustainable transportation funding. Joel?
Thank you, Madam President. This resolution is a templated resolution prepared by the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. They are requesting member municipalities to pass a resolution in support of substantial transportation funding restructuring at the state level. As indicated in the staff report, the transportation fund operated by the state of Wisconsin is not currently self-sustaining, meaning every biennial budget, the state has to kind of plug a budget gap within that fund in order to support the various transportation projects throughout the state of Wisconsin. The league is advocating for a structural long-term solution. That's one of their key pillars that they'll be lobbying in the next legislative session. And as I mentioned earlier, this is really just supporting that league's effort to have the state provide a robust systemic change to how it funds transportation infrastructure throughout the state of Wisconsin. And this resolution just supports that lobbying effort by the league.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution R 5-1-26, urging the state of Wisconsin to enact comprehensive, sustainable transportation funding.
Second.
Motion and a second to adopt resolution R 5-1-26. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 9D, consider, discuss, act on a resolution R 5-2-26, approving the Ashwaubenon 2025 Compliance Maintenance Annual Report. Brian Rickard.
All right, so this is kind of a rinse and repeat. We have to go through this every year. Our compliance maintenance annual report is an annual report that we submit to the DNR. Ensures that our sanitary system is being maintained, it's being fiscally responsible, and we're doing all the things to make sure that that system stays fully operational. So with that, you'll see there's a 9-page document application we fill out. If you want, we can go through it line by line, but as you can see, we got a rating, which is the top rating for 2 of the different categories. With that being said, we're supposed to present this report to our governing board, which is the village board. And with that, I'll open it to any questions you guys have.
Could you go through this line by line, please?
Absolutely. You guys will probably be sleeping, but I know Gary was probably waiting for it. So.
Gary's all excited.
As long as it's only 2 minutes.
With that, if you guys have any questions, by all means, I'm here to answer any of them.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution RS-2-26, approving the Village of Ashwaubenon 2025 Compliance Maintenance Annual Report.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve resolution R 5-2-26. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 10, other items of business. 10A, consider, discuss, act on a planned unit development PUD extension request for PUD ordinance 02-1-25 for Winding Creek Estate Subdivision, Parcel VA-L 333-2. Aaron.
All right, thank you. I'll share my screen again, just to bring up a map of the planned unit development for reference. Okay. So back in February of 2025, the applicant did receive final planned unit development approval for the proposed Winding Creek Estates development you see before you, consisting of single-family homes, some attached townhome units, duplexes, as well as multifamily apartments towards the east side of the property. Location, again, just for reference, we have Main Avenue to the north, South Ridge Road to the west, and then Pagel's Place extended through the area with a future connection north to the intersection of West Main and Spirit. There's also a connection to Ponds Edge Court to the south. Under our planned unit development ordinance requirements, if a PUD is not started within 1 year of the approval, it is subject to approval of an extension by the village board if so deemed. So the applicant has requested approval of a 15-month PUD extension to accommodate basically the bidding season, winter, and then spring start at the latest. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. The applicant team is in the audience as well.
Okay, any questions? Okay.
I'll make the motion to approve the 15-month extension to the start date and completion date for Plan Unit Development Ordinance 02-1-25 Winding Creek Estates.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the 15-month extension to the start date and completion date for ordinance 02-1-25. Any other comments, concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. 10B, consider, discuss, act on the Winding Creek Estates final subdivision plat, parcel VA-L 333-2. Aaron.
All right, I will share my screen again. And continuing the theme of Winding Creek Estates. So this is the next step in the process, in that it is for, there we go, the final subdivision plat. So as noted during the preliminary plat review, which was approved by the village board, a final plat is entitled to approval provided it is substantially similar to the preliminary plat. It does certainly meet that threshold. But with that approval, that feedback, recommended staff conditions for the final plat include approval by the Ashwaubenon Village Board of a PUD extension request, which was just approved. Prepare a detailed stormwater management report with calculations and erosion control plan for review and approval by the village
It's
engineer.
coming from Aaron. Might be coming from your computer.
Continuing on, confirm rear yard drainage for lots 12 through 22 and lots 28 through 46. Review the potential need for a stormwater management facility for lots 1 through 20 and lots 38 through 46. Prepare detailed engineering plans and construction documents for review and approval by the village engineer. Review the sanitary sewer plans for the eastern part of the development and potential need for a 30-foot easement and connection to new water interceptor sewer.
Does it say check your mic on your no? Oh, no.
So we'll just power through. Preparation and adoption of a formal development agreement between the Village of Ashwaubenon and the developer. Specific details to include but not limited to utility, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, water main and roadway, curb and gutter, street, initial and final asphalt timing, street lighting, sidewalks, cluster mailboxes, street trees, design, construction, warranty, and payment. Process for deeding Outlot 1 to the village for stormwater management purposes. Payment of $46,495 in park fees. Construction and delivery traffic shall not access the site via Ponds Edge Court. And approval of the final plat by the Brown County Planning Commission. As noted, the preliminary plat was previously approved by the village board, and the final plat was recommended for approval by the Ashwaubenon Plan Commission with the listed conditions. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, as noted, the development team is in the audience as well.
We reviewed this at the planning board, and, you know, it's a great project. Looking forward to the team getting this moving forward, so I'll make the motion to approve the Winding Creek Estates final subdivision plat for parcel VA-L333-2 with staff conditions.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the Winding Creek Estates final subdivision plat for parcel VA-L333-2 with staff conditions. Any other comments, concerns, questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 10C, consider, discuss, act on a development agreement for the Winding Creek Estates land division improvements between the Village of Ashwaubenon and VHC Inc. Aaron.
All right, last but not least for Winding Creek Estates, as with any subdivision improvement that we do here in the village, we do require a development agreement laying out the terms and conditions and requirements for those improvements. In this case, the draft development plan, development agreement is attached to the staff report. It was reviewed by both the developer and village staff, including village attorney. One edit that we just kind of figured out today is on page 6, H1, is the removal of the completion guarantee amount shall be further secured by a personal guarantee to be executed by Craig Kasner. That was not deemed necessary as a result of the completion guarantee being a certificate of deposit on file to the benefit of the village in the 120% amount. Recommended conditions of approval, including adding Exhibit C, the schedule of improvements chart, following receipt of bid pricing and executed contract between the bidders and developer, and then adding Exhibit D, the completion guarantee, including financial institution information and just the financial institution information, not including the personal guarantee. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I move to approve the development agreement between Winding Creek Estate Land Development between the Village of Ashwaubenon and VHC Inc.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the development agreement for the Winding Creek Estates land division improvements between the Village of Ashwaubenon and VHC Inc. Any questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. 10D, motion carried, I'm sorry. 10D, consider, discuss, act on a developer's performance agreement timeline amendment between the Village of Ashwaubenon and Multipond America, Inc. Aaron.
Thank you. Yes, the developer's performance agreement between the village and Multipond America. This was agreed to back in March of 2024 for the property that the CDA and village own on Packerland Drive, where it used to be Business Center Court. As noted in the staff report, the property was sold to Multipond on or before April 30th, 2024. These are all conditions of the original development agreement. Multipond America preparing a combination certified survey map, creating a single parcel to be recorded within 120 days of execution of the development agreement. Again, that's completed. Village of Ashwaubenon vacating the right-of-way at Business Center Court. That was completed. And then number 4, submittal of request for site plan and design review to the village prior to June 1st, 2026. That precipitated the need for the requested extension from Multipond. They're working through some preliminary designs right now. There's also just some, I guess, global economic uncertainties they're kind of working through as a company currently as well. However, they are planning on continuing to move forward with the project, including submittal of requests for site plan and design review to the village prior to March 31st, 2027, commencing construction no later than November 1st of 2027, and then completing construction and obtain a certificate of occupancy no later than February 1st, 2029. So the village board has the option to, I guess, pull back the property should the development agreement not be extended. Alternatively, if the development agreement is extended, but they don't meet those terms, at that point, then it could also be pulled back. Okay. Representative Multipond is in the audience as well, if you have any questions for him.
Okay, anybody have any questions?
No, that's a nice project. We knew it was gonna take a little while, so I'll make a motion to approve the revised timeline opposed by the amendment development performance agreement.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the revised timeline as proposed in the amended developers performance agreement between the Village of Ashwaubenon and Multipond America, Inc. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Motion carried. 10E, consider, discuss, act on the 2027 village budget calendar and process. Gosh, we're starting that already, huh, Greg?
In the new ERP system.
Okay, we can talk like that.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everybody. Anyway, yes, it is, right? You're thinking we just got warm weather, put away the jackets and everything, and it's going to be summer, but yeah, it's budget time. So for some of us, it never really goes away. But what I wanted to do today is just kind of throw out the calendar in front of you. This was, part of this was published in the budget last year. We're explaining kind of the overall process, but also give you an opportunity to throw in something into the calendar that says, hey, wait a second, I'd really like it if we did this thing this year as well. So, kind of from a high level, we roll out the budget, right? We start the year, but the department heads really come February, March, they're already starting to think capital projects again. It's in the back of their minds, and they're working frantically to meet, our deadlines to get those kind of in place for the next year and the years after so that we can present it to the board in July. And then kind of that's where our starting point, well, that's not really our starting point, but that's starting point for the annual budget, kind of starting to identify some of those major projects, and then we kind of work into our annual process. But above that is also, you'll hear later, is strategic plan. That's kind of the highest level. Then we work into capital planning, and we work in financial management planning, where we're thinking long-term impacts of different decisions that are made and how they all the way trickle down to our annual budget. So where we're at today is kind of this, like I said, the CIP is starting to roll in. We'll start reviewing that. That'll come out and get reviewed, and we can, yay, nay, things that you'd like to see, or maybe things that aren't in there that are new, hot topics, whatever. We'd like to make those adjustments as we go along. Try to lock those in come August when we kick out the annual budget process with all the department heads and other key stakeholders in the process. They start going at it, and they'll submit their budgets in mid to late September. I'll compile all that information for the president, the village manager. We start to meet, and we meet with the department heads. And along the way, we'll give updates to finance personnel and to village board where we're at. Some of the key dates are also listed on here, real specific dates as it relates to the 2027 annual budget. We'll be in July at the village board meeting. We'll start talking about priorities, budget outlooks, what we're seeing out there, and how they relate potentially to strategic objectives that we're doing, or how that's going to play. Well, like I said, in August we meet, but then come back to the board in September, where we're going to start talking about compensation plans, health and dental insurance impacts, those types of things. Those two alone are significant players in the annual budget process, in our final, what we settle as a levy and what we're able to do with other projects. So I just wanted to put this out there. Again, we'll meet then. Ultimately, we will meet with the joint board meeting with finance and personnel that is scheduled for Tuesday, November 10th. So Tuesday, November 3rd is kind of a small election, I think, right? Yeah, there's a little thing going on. But we'll do a week after that, and then we go through the whole budget line by line, and then ultimately by statute, we have to have an adopted budget by the end of November. So we'll meet in November board meeting where we do the final public hearing and adoption. And then from there, I start submitting information to the county for the taxes, and all that starts all over again. So I always joke with Rex, especially, it's like, yep, pretty soon he'll be telling me the lake closes tomorrow. And I'm like, holy cow, they're at the summer. But we're already working on the budget, but these guys are working hard on their summer priorities. So that's why it's important to kind of have you get in the loop now, start thinking about these things so this doesn't all come crashing in September and we're scrambling to try to make everything work. So Any questions? Anything that you'd like to see differently? It's kind of an open discussion. We'll make a motion to approve this as laid out, but if there's changes you want to make, we can do that as well.
This staff condition is in the new ERP system?
No, we will not do that this year.
I didn't think so, Greg.
no.
I just was
So,
throwing that out at you.
no.
So, had to pick on you a little
No,
bit.
that's okay. So I've been already started today, started updating files, believe it or not.
Yep.
For the budget, so.
I'll make the motion to accept the 2027 budget timeline as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second to accept the 2027 budget timeline as presented. Any comments, concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Motion carried. 10F, consider, discuss, act on bicycle and pedestrian accommodations on Morris Avenue between Holmgren Way and Ashland Frontage Road.
All right.
Ryan Rickert.
So one of our 2027 capital improvement projects includes the reconstruction of Morris Ave between Holmgren and Ashland. So with that being said, we're in the very initial stages of design for that project. While we get into the design, one of the very first things that we need to figure out is what does a cross-section of that roadway look like? So how wide are the travel lanes? How wide's the parking lane? Are we gonna put sidewalks on one side of the street, both sides of the street? Having those initial conversations. We started off earlier this year, back in March actually, speaking to our bicycle and pedestrian committee to see what they intended for this essentially cross-section to look like. What type of pedestrian accommodation should we have? Reason for that is as part of our comprehensive bike and pedestrian plan, since this is a collector roadway, which is the roadway designation, one of the things that we're supposed to consider is whether or not we put pedestrian accommodations, so bike lane, sidewalk, stuff like that. With that being said, we took it in front of our bicycle and pedestrian committee. They advised that we actually reach out and have a public informational meeting, reach out to the neighbors nearby, see what their hopes and desires are. We held that public informational meeting on April 13th. We followed it up with a survey so they could jump online, provide feedback. You know, what do they desire? Do we want to have a sidewalk on one side, both sides, or just leave it the way it is? With that being said, we only received back 4 surveys, which was pretty surprising because we sent out 117. But the consensus was the same. They decided that we should leave pedestrian accommodations as they currently exist. So right now, there's a sidewalk on the south side of Morris Ave from Holmgren to Elmview. It kind of terminates just past the church. With that being said, we brought all this information back to our bicycle and pedestrian committee. At that point in time, they made a decision that they're recommending to leave the pedestrian accommodations as they currently exist, so don't add anything additional. So with that, I'm open to any questions. If not, looking for action from the board as to what the desire for pedestrian accommodations may be.
And isn't it also true that from the last stretch out to Ashland Frontage Road, it was gonna be almost impossible to put an actual sidewalk in because there's just not enough room?
Definitely, yep. So Jay touched on something really good. So when you go from Dove out to Ashland, the terrace is actually so narrow that we would actually have to buy right away because the terrace is right behind the back of curb. With that being said, if you are familiar with that roadway, a lot of the houses are very close to the road. So essentially, some of those houses, as soon as you come down their front stoop, down the stairs, you'd be right on the sidewalk, and you'd be right on the street. So their houses literally would front the sidewalk. There's limited to no space. So we'd have to purchase right away, which would be an uphill battle. And essentially, all you're doing is allowing the pedestrians to get to Ashland or Ashland Frontage Road where there are no pedestrian accommodations. It's kind of a dead end once you get much past Dove.
I believe you're gonna have some more sessions with the public on that, Brian.
Yes, at a minimum, we'll have at least two more public informational meetings once we get a little bit further in design, so about at 60%. And then we'll have one right before we have our contractor on board, under contract, so likely early next spring, just to let people know, hey, these are the players in the sandbox, and this is what their schedule looks like.
Being associated to that neighborhood, knowing the neighbors, I think we should go along with their recommendations of leaving it like it is. Like you said, you can't do nothing on the south side. North side's possible, but then you gotta start all the way from Holmgren. down to Ashland. So my recommendations would be listening to the people again and making sure that their thoughts are taken into consideration and leaving it like it is.
I do want to just add to that comment, because this will potentially come up in the future. So if, based on the conversation at the board meeting, depending on how the vote actually transpires, if it's elected to just continue and maintain the existing infrastructure as is, we wouldn't extend sidewalk, but just as a note, this is a full reconstruct. So curb, gutter, this is not your typical mill pave. Road elevations may change slightly based on final design. Driveway aprons will likely be replaced at each individual property to match those grade elevations. When we replace an apron, we would likely put in the sidewalk cakes in the driveway, but there would be no connecting sidewalk between the driveways, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Some of the existing driveways, these are some of the older homes in the village, may not have that sidewalk section within their apron. So that will look like a change. I just want you to be aware of it, that residents, well, I thought you weren't putting sidewalk in. Well, we're technically not. We're just placing the locations for the grades correctly to match where sidewalk would have been. It also provides a great delineator between where the right-of-way starts and ends to their yard. So when we have people come out and say, well, where can I place, where can I plant a tree? Or if I want to put something in my yard, where can I do that? It's very easy for zoning and building inspection to say, well, see where that sidewalk cake is in your driveway? That really kind of helps delineate where that right-of-way begins and ends. Probably more than you wanted to know, but I just wanted to be transparent because residents will point that out, right, Brian?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the good thing is too, is a lot of times people think that their lawns, front yards go all the way out to the back of curb. So when you put those sidewalk sections in, unfortunately, when different utilities may come in and they're putting in, say, fiber or something like that, oh, they're in my front yard, then my front yard, it's like, kind of, but not really. They're in the village right away. So it does help to delineate that, much like Joel touched on.
Brian, we just got done with Cormier putting sidewalks in, changing apron grades and things of that nature. Have we had a lot of complaints or people's thoughts on that project?
Complaints, we only took 2 complaints in. We did soften everyone's apron. I'll be honest, some of those yards are very steep. The homes are up very high. Yeah. So we did everything we could to try to make their aprons so I can confidently say they're all less steep than they were before we came in. What we did is we took what was a 5-foot section of sidewalk that was at ADA compliance. You can reduce that down to 4 feet. So what that did is it allowed part of the sidewalk section to kind of absorb their apron and lay it a little bit flatter. So you'll notice if you do go out there, there's probably about 5 or 6 driveways that when you go through the sidewalk portion, only the 4-foot back half of their sidewalk portion is at that 1.5% cross slope, which is the ADA compliant cross slope. And then the last foot is actually kind of built into their apron. So sometimes it may be hard to envision, but if you want to see what it looks like, we can go take a peek.
Well, also because Bike and Ped recommended this, I think the motion to recommend that reconstruction of Morris Avenue from Holmgren Way to Ashland Frontage Road does not include the extension of new sidewalk. Alternative 3 from Elmview Drive to Dove, and on the east side of Dove Street from Morris to Borvan Street.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to recommend the reconstruction of Morris Avenue from Holmgren Way to Ashland Frontage Road does not include the extension of new sidewalk. Alternative 3 from Elmview Drive to Dove Street and on the east side of Dove Street from Morris Avenue to Borvan. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. 10G, consider discuss act on a request to permit mopeds or off-highway motorcycles to operate on village-owned lands and conservancies. Joel?
Thank you, Madam President. As indicated in the staff report, trustee Atkinson had requested this item be discussed and reviewed by village board. It is really to identify a policy that may allow individuals to operate what oftentimes are viewed as e-bikes within village-owned lands, whether it be a village park or other public lands, or even in some of these village-owned or publicly owned conservancy areas that line residential neighborhoods. Before we really get into the policy question at hand, I think it's important to understand and identify what precisely we're speaking to as it relates to what would be considered an allowable device, if you will, versus a device that would not be permitted under Wisconsin state law. So real quickly, I just want to touch on what an electric bicycle is so that we have a clear understanding of that definition. If you recall, about a year and a half ago, we revised our code to reflect statutory language as the definition of an electric bicycle. And for Wisconsin state statutes, an electric bicycle basically means a device or a bicycle that is equipped with fully operative pedals for propulsion by human power and an electric motor of 750 watts or less that meets any one of three requirements, and there's three classifications. A Class 1 electric bicycle is an electric bicycle where it provides assistance only when the rider is pedaling. So meaning they can't pull on a throttle and have the electric motor propel the bike. You actually have to physically pedal the bike, and it's providing assistance. So think of it as if you're a bicyclist that's going up a large hill or over a long period of time and you need some assistance in pedaling that device. That assistance is provided up to the point which the bicycle reaches a speed of 20 miles per hour. So that would be the maximum speed that the assistive part of the motor would provide performance. You can, in theory, ride the bike faster than 20 miles per hour, but of course you're pedaling much quicker to achieve that. A Class 2 electric bicycle is an electric bicycle that may be powered solely by the motor and is not capable of providing assistance when the bicycle reaches the speed of 20 miles per hour. So this is similar to a Class 1, but where it's different is that instead of having to pedal the bike in order to receive that electric power, you can actually hit a throttle. So oftentimes you'll see these devices by kids because they can zoom at a relatively quick clip at 20 miles per hour, but no greater, without pedaling the bike. And again, once you've reached the speed of 20 miles per hour, that electric motor turns off, and it will not be able to provide any type of assistance or power to the gears. A Class 3 electric bicycle is an electric bicycle equipped with that motor, and it provides assistance only when the rider is pedaling. So again, you can't throttle it on its own. You must pedal in order to get that assistance. And that bicycle can reach up to 28 miles per hour in providing assistance. So similar to a Class 1 in the components and the requirement that you must pedal to receive that assistance, but it increases that speed from 20 miles per hour to 28 miles per hour. It should be noted for a Class 3 electric bicycle, you must be at least 16 years of age to legally operate a Class 3 electric bicycle. Then you get into the common definition of a moped. So a moped is a motor vehicle capable of speeds not more than 30 miles per hour with a 150-pound rider on a dry, level, hard surface with no wind. It's excluding a tractor. It has a power source that's integral as part of the vehicle, meaning the motor is part of the frame, part of the device itself. It's different from a motor bicycle. A motor bicycle is simply a bicycle in which somebody has fabricated an alteration to the device by attaching a motor to it. It wasn't part of the original manufacturer. A moped can be a bicycle-type vehicle, which means it has fully operative pedals. So I liken it to a moped that I used to own when I was 16, a 1978 Honda moped with a little yellow banana seat. And you had to pedal it in order to get up the hill because it would only go 20 miles per hour. So a moped can have those operative pedals, but the operative pedals are more or less used to assist the device versus the motor itself. It also may be a motorcycle with an automatic transmission and an engine certified by the manufacturer not to be more than cubic centimeters or an equivalent power unit. A motor bicycle, as I mentioned, is very similar to a moped, but it's a bicycle that has had a motor attached to it. It wasn't part of the original design or construction of that vehicle. A motorcycle is basically a motor vehicle manufactured with motive power, doesn't talk about gas or electric. It has a seat or a saddle requiring somebody to sit astride, has not more than 3 wheels in contact with the ground, steering controlled by handlebars, accelerating and braking controlled by that handlebar or foot controls, and is capable of speeds in excess of 30 miles per hour. And then finally, an off-highway motorcycle is a motorcycle, but it is not designed for highway use, but rather designed for off-highway use, regardless of whether it is also designed for highway use. So it can be kind of both, but it's specifically designed for that off-highway use. So in your packet is this graphic. This graphic was actually produced by, I believe it was Waukesha County, kind of stole it for tonight's meeting purpose. Sarah is actually working on an infographic that's going to be very, very comparable to this and very specific to Ashwaubenon that we would then produce in a printed format to give to our public safety officers that not only they can then use for themselves to understand the difference, but also could hand out to individuals in the community so that they too can understand the difference. So one of the things that we're going to be attaching to this graphic is that definition of a motorcycle or moped. So what we typically are seeing in the community is individuals that are going out and buying what are effectively mopeds or motorcycles. They don't meet the definition of a class 1, 2, or 3 e-bike, primarily because their motor size is much larger than the 750 watt maximum. So oftentimes, and trust me, doing all the research that I've done, every time I go on the internet or go on social media, I get advertisements, blitzed advertised campaigns for electric bikes. And they're all advertised as electric bikes, but they would not meet the definition of a class 1, 2, or 3 e-bike. Because likely they have a motor that's in excess of 750 watts. They have speeds that reach well above 30 miles per hour. They may or may not require pedal assistance, or they may not have pedals that assist in the operation of the bike. So in those cases, those types of bikes that you're commonly seeing are mopeds or they're motorcycles. So in the state of Wisconsin, in order to operate a moped, you have to be at least 16 years of age, have at least a probationary driver's license to operate a moped. To operate a motorcycle, you need a Class M motorcycle license, again, 16 years of age. So many of the devices that we're seeing, many of the young kids these days, they're operating devices that they couldn't operate without a driver's license of some fashion or form. And those devices would need to be registered and licensed by the DMV. So they wouldn't even be qualified as roadworthy unless they met that requirement. The other thing that we're seeing a lot of is that red box in the graphic are these electric dirt bikes. And I think you could probably see some of these kids riding these. They look like off-highway motorcycles or motocross style bikes, but rather than having a gas engine, they have an electric motor. And oftentimes, these are motors that exceed well over the 750 watts, anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 watt maximum. They certainly exceed 30 miles per hour, so they don't qualify or classify as a moped. And oftentimes, if you look at them, their pedals are not actually operable, they're just pegs. And so they don't meet the definition oftentimes of an electric bike for that purpose alone. So we're seeing a lot of these types of devices being operated by kids that are certainly under 16 years of age, number one. They are operating them without a driver's license in areas that would not be permittable under Wisconsin uniform traffic law. And so our officers are stuck in a position where we're having to enforce traffic law, but also providing education to parents and riders that these devices technically aren't even allowed on Wisconsin roads under the conditions in which they're operating them. And so we're seeing a little bit more activity from public safety over the last few weeks as the weather has allowed for more riders to be out, And so enforcement activities are taking place. And so I think the policy question that Chris has proposed for the board to consider is that there are kids that have these types of devices that would be classified as either a moped motorcycle or an off-highway motorcycle. Is there a place that we can allow them to operate both lawfully and safely within the community? And that's really kind of the policy question. And if you look at it from this standpoint, the devices that are on the screen or in your packet, kids can, again, kids under 16 years of age can operate class 1 and 2 e-bikes. 16 and older can ride all 3 of the actual class e-bikes within the village. If we were to provide an opportunity for kids to operate under the age of 16, that would have to come in the form of an electric dirt bike. So what we would need to do is meet the state requirements of off-highway usage. So we would effectively need to designate trails, whether it be in parks or on trails, for these types of devices to be operated. These devices would still need to be registered through the DNR. The riders must be at least 12 years of age, have taken an approved safety training class from the DNR to operate them. And then we would have to identify, delineate, and designate where those bikes can be operated. I do want to note that these electric dirt bikes are relatively quiet when they're operating, but we wouldn't necessarily be able to discern or eliminate the use of gas-powered bikes. So if we were to say we're going to open up a conservancy and delineate a trail for off-highway motorcycles, we would have to allow them to be both electric bicycle or electric dirt bikes and gas-powered dirt bikes. So you wouldn't be able to differentiate between the two. There's no definition between those two within state law, and so you'd have to effectively allow for both of those types of devices to be used. There are a number of other issues as it relates to that. If you were to allow for kids to ride what would be commonly referred to as a moped or an electric motorcycle in these areas, how would the kids get to these delineated or designated locations? They're already operating them on the streets today. Our officers are having to, enforce the uniform traffic law. I doubt that parents are going to strap on their kid's dirt bike or their motorcycle or their moped on the back of their car, drive them to these designated areas and take them off and have them operate them. So in all likelihood, they're basically going to continue to operate them on the streets. It's going to be a liability issue for the kids, and it's certainly a lawful issue, an enforcement issue for our public safety department to then enforce that law. At the end of the day, I think what we're trying to do is paint a cleaner picture for parents to understand what is a legally operated electric bicycle in the village, not only the village, but in the entire state of Wisconsin. If we were to adopt policy that conflates that or creates avenues for people to operate outside of those lawful grounds, I think it's going to create more confusion. It's going to be harder for our law enforcement officers to enforce law. And it will create a condition that could create additional risk and liability for the village, because we're essentially saying state uniform traffic law, we don't worry about that. We're going to turn a blind eye to it. We're going to ignore it, and we're going to allow these individuals to operate unlawfully in the community. And that in itself could create some liability and some risk for the village. So again, kind of walk through the definitions, what would be permittable for us to regulate or allow in the village. Again, we would not necessarily be able to allow children to operate motorcycles or mopeds in the village. We would only be able to delineate or designate off-highway motorcycle trails and areas within the village. But there again, there's a variety of unintended consequences that could come from that. In the form of unlawful usage in the streets. We now have to figure out how to regulate and enforce existing state laws as it relates to the use of OHMs. In addition to that, you're going to have to identify where those areas in the village where you would permit that type of usage. And to be quite honest with you, I think if we were to designate conservancy areas in the village for that type of use, because many of these conservancy areas back along homes, single-family homes, many of these residents view these areas as extensions of their backyard, and now you're gonna be running basically off-highway dirt bikes within their backyard areas or what they perceive to be their backyard areas. I think we're gonna receive a significant number of complaints, and it's gonna become a real challenge from an enforcement standpoint for public safety to deal with that. Staff at this point is not recommending making any policy changes. Our code reflects state traffic law. It's consistent, and it is able to be enforced because of the consistency that we have both locally and within state traffic law. It comes down to providing appropriate education and enforcement and ensuring the parents are supportive in that effort to make sure that their kids are operating lawfully within the community. With that, I know Rex has kind of reviewed this, Chief Baxter has looked at it. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. I know Tyler has looked at it quite a bit, and can provide some legal framework questions if the board so chooses to have that conversation.
Before we get going on this, I'd like to hear Chief Baxter, him and his comments and things that he's running into on these bikes that are running all over this village, not properly doing it like it should be done, following traffic rules.
I think though, Gary, that's kind of irrelevant, because we're looking at, like, they're riding on the streets, nobody's arguing that, they don't want it.
We're
that's
talking
fine.
about what they can do and can't do right now and where they can be and can't be.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. Yeah, some of the issues that we're running into is that, as you can see from the graphic, there's many different types of these e-bikes, and I don't think parents, it's the same as the officers at our apartment, we don't know what the difference is. So that's why we discussed putting together graphics so that we can have some education to not only the people that are riding these bikes, but also to the parents, because I think, you know, kids in one block get the little electric dirt bike, and you know, the other kids want to get an e-bike, and that's what they think they're getting. They think they're getting these electric bicycles, which they are not. Most of them are electric dirt bikes. They have excessive speeds. People aren't really riding them. They're young riders, so they're not really riding them in a way that they're following any rules of the road. And I think if we're going to be opening it up to this area, I agree that they also do need a place to go because they can't be operated on the street. So I do support that. I just don't know that the Conservancies are going to be the areas that are going to be a place to support it, because I do feel that they're going to be, like Joel said too, with, you know, the people that have the Conservancy in their backyards, they're going to see the mopeds or the motorbikes, the gas-powered ones and the electric ones going through that area. There's going to be a lot of complaints to public safety. So first of all, we're going to try to get ahead of it and educate the people with these types of flyers and be able to get information to the parents and to the riders. But then if they're using these Conservancy spaces for off-roading, I just suspect that there's going to be a lot of injuries. I just have concerns with the location of where these people are going to be and being able to get to them and extract them if there's any, you know, accidents or anything in the woods. But I think the biggest one is, Joel kind of hit on it before too, that we might designate an area and people will know that they can bring their electric dirt bike to this area if approved, and they can ride it there. But how are they going to get there? They are going to leave their houses. They're going to take the streets. They're going to ride them on the sidewalks. They're going to do whatever they can to get to that area, because I don't think anyone's going to properly trailer them and bring them over there. So right now, I think the biggest thing is just we need to educate everybody so everyone's aware. It's confusing for us. There's a lot of different scooters, electric bikes, electric dirt bikes, mopeds. It's a lot to take in, and obviously we need a chart so we can sit and talk to people to educate them.
I think my view on this is, I agree, we kind of, and Tom, you just mentioned that too. To find a place for them is the most ideal thing. And I think that's why Chris is bringing this up. We have that, the issue is get there, but what I would like to see is I would like to have staff work with the Bike and Ped Committee. This is a Bike and Ped Committee thing. I would like to see the Bike and Ped Committee along with the Park and Rec, come back and say, okay, here's an area where we think we can do that. I don't think we can open it up to all the conservancies because some of them are too narrow. It's just not gonna work. I talked my daughter's backyard, it wouldn't work there. There's no way. So I would like to see this go back to the Bike and Ped Committee and find out and work with staff, and maybe Aaron gets involved in here. Is there some place where this could happen, then maybe the trailering would make more sense? Because I agree, the Conservancies, people aren't gonna trailer the kids' bikes over there. It's not gonna happen.
I don't know about that. I have 6 kids that trailer the bikes to my house almost daily.
Yeah, well, we had an issue, I wanna say it was 3 years ago, 4 years ago, where kids were doing this exact same thing, but it was with four-wheelers. Same issue, same type of thing, but they were doing it in backyards, and we had the neighbors coming in and complaining about that. And then they tried to find a different place to take them to. I don't recall where they ended up, but they ended up going to a different place to be able to do that. So I would like to see this to go back to the Bike and Ped Committee with staff and to work on, is there an area, and maybe this is where our friends from the county might be able to help us too.
Yeah.
If there's an area within the county that makes more sense for something to be able to do this. 'Cause I have,
Forestation camp.
you know,
Yeah, I would just, maybe add, I caution the thought, and if that's the direction that the board would like to take and refer this back to the Bike and Ped Committee, that's certainly appropriate, and we'll certainly do that. This particular topic doesn't relate to bicycles. These are not bicycles. These are motorcycles designated for off-highway use. So this is not really a bicycle issue. And I think because we conflate the issue that they're called e-bikes. They're marketed as e-bikes, but they're not bicycles. These are motorcycles. And is that the role of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee to determine where bicycles should be, or not bicycles, but motorcycles, if you will? And to be clear, the only allowable use under state law is an off-highway motorcycle. That's the only allowable use we could create for these devices to be operating in the village. So is that a Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee responsibility? If we're gonna create.
I think it's probably, Joel,
It's probably more park
totally
board than
get,
anything.
yeah, it's probably more park board maybe. I get the definitional thing. The problem is the residents are thinking they're bikes. So we've kind of got that difference between what state's definition is and what residents are thinking they are. So, and I get that.
Again, we're not changing the definition of any of these things. It's a
Can't do it.
policy to determine whether or not we should allow them to operate on public lands. That's the policy discussion that has to take place. So we're not in a position as a village to change the definition. That's not our position. I would say from a layperson, or not layperson, but from a practitioner standpoint, the more we conflate an already confusing issue, it's gonna become more and more challenging for us. So, and that's, I think, one of the concerns that we have is that, well, we're gonna allow these types of bikes to be operated here, but not here. Well, why? I think people are already confused by the whole e-bike conversation. I think that's certainly part of the challenge. I would argue that if state law were to change, it really only needs to change in the respect that it needs to help clarify. I think the definitions are clear, but people are being marketed with e-bikes, and they're not e-bikes. In fact, I saw an advertisement recently that said an electric moped, but when you actually read the specifications of the device, it would qualify as a Class 3 e-bike, but they called it a moped. So it's going both ways.
No, I get it.
I think, one of the analogies that I would have is, and you kind of brought it up, Jay, is four-wheelers, UTVs, snowmobiles. Do we allow any of these devices to operate on public lands right now? So is that different? And if that's different, that's fine. If allowing off-highway motorcycles to operate on village lands, why, right? Why that versus these other devices? I'm not arguing for or against, just saying why. Because at the end of the day, it's our staff that have to explain it.
I guess I would ask, why do we allow football, baseball, basketball, and hockey played on our village lands? Motorsports is still a massive sport with a huge following, and we have taken it away from the kids. And our community is made of our children that want to do this. All the parents, they want their kids to be able to do this. It teaches them to ride, it teaches them to work on it, it teaches them to be respectful, it teaches them interaction with law enforcement. And we have fully taken it away, and every time we bring this up, we're told they can't, they can't, they can't. It's time to give the kids something they can do. The point of me bringing this up was to design an area that is a motorsports park, to allow whatever we deem the kids to be able to ride over there in a nice, safe area where that is what it's designed for. It's not designed for Mary to go walk a dog or, you know, Casey to go roam around on for a nice stroll. This is specifically designed for this. It would just be the same thing as me going for a walk across the football field during the game. It's still public land, but I shouldn't be there. And that is my point with this. We have taken this away. It's a massive, massive sport. We have the land to do it. We keep searching for land to build retention ponds. What a waste of land. But we need them. What more perfect could we do would be to build a motorsports park all the way around it. That's why I bring it forward. The kids want this. The parents want this. That's who we represent. Again, could we use county land? Absolutely. You know what would be ideal? Airport land, because you can't do anything on it. Right there, that's in the heart of Ashwaubenon. You could have a perfect setup. There's woods riding, there could be, you know, track riding, all of it. Can we do this? We absolutely can do this. We're choosing to not do it, and that's why I'm bringing this forward.
Yeah, I don't know that staff is saying don't do it. We're just, what we'd like to do is set the framework to make it lawful, right?
Correct.
I think that's important to know because it like I said, it's a very confusing, these e-bikes are a confusing issue. So if you want to designate an area for motocross or off-highway motorcycle usage, you can do that. You can establish that policy. You would have to have the programming in place. It's no different than saying we want to offer soccer programming or football or baseball. We want to offer this programming with this particular sport in mind. There is some regulation to it, right? Mm-hmm. Football, pretty much any age, there's no statutory state requirement for age or equipment or anything from that standpoint. But in this particular sport, it is regulated by the state. We would have to adhere to that regulation, and it does create some unintended consequences by doing that. It is a service demand. There are some liabilities, there are some risks. Before a policy is determined and a location is identified, I think it's important for the village board to fully understand and vet those risks and liabilities that are associated with doing that. No one's saying that there's people that sit at this table that participate in motorsports. In fact, that's their preferred sport. So I think there are certainly staff members that are supportive of the concept of motorsports. What we want to do is just ensure that we're doing it the right way, that we're not creating a situation or a condition that we're promoting or permitting what would otherwise be an unlawful activity, right? So if we're going to do it, we would have to do it the right way. And then it comes down to, at this point, at this entry level of conversation, board, you guys tell us as staff, is this the direction you want to go? Do you want us to look at establishing a program to allow for motorsport activities on some type of public land? And if that's the desire that the board would like us to take, well, then that's the feedback that we have, and then we work through that. But I don't want to, ultimately what I don't want to do is create a situation where we're creating more confusion to an already confusing issue. One that we're still going to have the e-bike issue, if you will, on the streets, and that we're still going to need to address that.
Mm-hmm. I am sympathetic to Chris's request because I grew up in a neighborhood where everybody had a mini bike. And it was good, clean fun, and, you know, all the things you said good about it, I agree, there are good things about it. The only problem I have here is I don't think any reasonable person wants mini bikes running through their backyard. So the Conservancy is probably not the answer. I think it's looking like if we want it to happen in Ashwaubenon, we need to find a place for it, maybe around one of our new water retention ponds or something. Or, you know, if we have, I don't know what the status of our undeveloped property is, but, you know, if there's property out there that we want to invest in to do that, we could look at that, but I think not in a conservancy. When I think of conservancy, I think of nature and people walking and enjoying the nature, and it just doesn't fit with e-bikes and gas, certainly not gas-powered engines going through there. And then my other concern was when you said, how are they gonna get to it? I think if we had a dedicated, let's say we get a retention pond somewhere and we make a track around it or something in a big parking lot, it seems more reasonable to me that people would trailer bikes there and use it for that. I know there are places around here, like in Denmark, that are these sand trails for motocross and whatever. Maybe we could look at something like that.
Yeah, unfortunately, Denmark sounds like it closed, so you have Pine Ridge close by, there's a couple private tracks around here, I think there's 4 within the area, and then Bondwell has 1, but again, I mean, it's a great outlet. What people don't realize that's coming is these, and I'm gonna use, it's an e-modal, that's the fad. This stuff's here to stay, and there's stuff coming that you can't enforce. The fastest thing that I've found to buy right now is actually an electric scooter, and it runs 94 miles per hour, and I can get it to 120 miles an hour quickly and easily. And that's what's coming. When people buy this stuff, they wanna go faster, they wanna do more and more. If you give them a nice spot off-road, it's going to occupy them instead and keep them off the street. Because what you're seeing right now is kids running around doing what they want because they have no other option. If you give them an option, then they'll be able to go and do this there.
I'm willing to look for something like that. I'm just,
I
So,
agree.
Joel-
The Conservancy
Not the
isn't a great
Conservancy.
spot, but it was definitely a way, and when I talked to Joel, I wanted to be able to have this conversation with the village board. That was the point of it, is to be able to open the floor and have the conversation.
I would really like to see if we could have staff work with the county to see, because the airport
Yeah.
area.
I actually would
is
like to open the floor for,
Perfect.
yeah. I think make a motion to open the floor.
I'll second it.
Motion and second to open the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Motion carried. Come up, state your name and address, please.
Is there a possibility that we could, look at expanding the Brown County Fairgrounds in something like this? It already has a track out there. They use it for all sorts of motorized vehicles, mostly cars. But can it be adapted to a certain amount of time to be run out there at the Brown County Fairgrounds, saying, hey, from X amount of time to X amount of time, it's gonna be open for e-bikes, dirt bikes, or how we,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great option. It really is.
That's an opportunity, it's something to look at, okay? We can bring that up to our Park and Ed Committee and see if we can work with the different municipalities to get something like that. That, to me, the Brown County Fairgrounds would be an ideal location, already got it set up. And to expand it some way might be an alternative we can look at.
Another thing, place that was mentioned today also was the reforestation camp. You know, so that might be. an
Again, you're
option
talking about
also.
trails there, Mary, but this would be something that would be separate and set up for some type of motorized vehicles, as you were talking about, Joel.
Yeah, Rex was gonna add just some comment on that, because it's something that, the board could entertain in trying to petition the county to look at it from a committee standpoint.
So, a couple of things. We're gonna try and walk a fine line here between personal opinion and political ramifications and so on, so on and so forth. So, Zeke, you talked about having it at the fairgrounds. At first blush, sounds like a good idea. They do have that old track there, but I was also a number of years ago involved with being on the committee for the Brown County master planning process for the fairgrounds, specifically for the fairgrounds. And I know that they're going to be expanding the urban campground that's there along the riverfront. And I don't know, I can only guess how the Brown County Parks Department would feel about having, because if you're going to allow electric bikes, so you're going to have to allow gas bikes, and now you're going to have, because, right, they're loud. Some of them are, at least the gas-powered ones are. I don't know how they would feel about having it at the fairgrounds. I've had some conversation with our staff about, is there any particular park that this would be at? And it's the same type of thing. I just got a phone call today from a gentleman who lived over by Sherwood Forest, complaining that someone was zipping through Sherwood Forest. He was on like a 90-degree corner, right? Because there's a lot of different angles in a lot of our parks. People say, well, Hidden Valley would be great for that. Sherwood Forest would be great for that. There's a lot of angles there. It's all about angles and sight lines. He said he was coming around the corner and the electric bike was coming in the opposite direction and nearly ran him over, and the kids were flying. So don't know what the size is for that. But that being said, I agree with Chris and Kelly and a lot of the other people that are here. There's a need for that. So maybe what my suggestion is, for the lack of having a park that I think would be a current park that's suitable for something like that in the village, would you be willing to do a letter of inquisition to the Ed and Rec Committee to see if there's any available county land out there specifically for this type of track? Because there's the other concern, if we put it in Ashwaubenon, is it going to be an Ashwaubenon track, or is it going to be more of a county park? Because every community right now, through the Park and Rec Association, we've got a little mini group here of the Brown County Park and Rec directors, and every one of us is struggling with this right now. With what do we do with these bikes, and they're all on our trails, and people are calling every week, complaining, and people are almost getting hit, so on and so forth. And my concern is that it doesn't matter if it's Ashwaubenon or not, if one municipality puts it in, I guarantee you bike owners from every municipality are going to be bringing their bikes there. Yep. And is that what we want? Or if we put it in Ashwaubenon, do we want people from all over? Because then it almost sounds like a private, operation where you need someone to run it and manage it and supervise it. And I don't know, charge admission, and I don't know if that's viable or not. Sounds like some places might be going out of business because of it. Not real sure. But if wherever it's put, it's going to attract people from all over the county, which, in my professional opinion, would say that might be more of a county function then versus an individual municipality, whether it's Ashwaubenon or any other entity within the Brown County area. But I don't know, I don't know what land the county has or whether they'd either want to get into that. But my personal opinion is it's more of a county function than an individual municipality function. No matter what municipality, no matter where you're from. But my 2 cents.
I only brought up the Brown County Fairgrounds because they already have the setup there. Okay, it would be something that we could look at through the Park and Ed Committee, and we could bring that up to them and see what's going on. That might be an alternative. Just suggestion.
I think that might go over a little bit better than around by the airport, just because, like Zeke said, the setup is a little bit better over at the Brown County Fairgrounds. Parking.
So I know one of the things that you're really looking for, Joel, and to kind of try to bring what is this? I think, and I'd be willing to make a motion of this, that we'd like to direct staff to work with the county to try to find a designated area that could be used for, I don't know what the right word's gonna be, Joel. You can help me out here.
Motorsports?
Let's just use motorsports.
Motorsports.
Let's just use
Clean.
motorsports. Just in general like that, let's find out what's available, let's find out what it is. Rex brings up a lot of good points that have been flying through my mind. How do you manage it? Who takes care of it? Who, there's a lot of those questions, but I think first, let's see if we can find an area where this could be done. Then we can worry about the management of it and all that other stuff.
Right, as we move forward. I mean, there's ways to work through all of it. You can make it so if anybody wants to go use it, no matter who's coming from where, you have to have a sticker, annual sticker from the village of Ashwaubenon. So if they're not registered here, they can't be on it, or, I mean, there's ways to work through it. I mean, our industrial park land is an ideal spot, depending what you do, because it's already noisy and dirty and dusty, and nobody can, really complain about anything out there. There's lots of areas that we can do this, I guess, is my point. So
I'll second that motion.
I would like to still add that I want staff to work at, even looking at village land though as well. I want to move forward with some of this, see if there is any areas that we do have retention ponds, areas we're looking at that can be, either something we currently have, or if we can look at acquiring, or whatever we're gonna be doing. I mean, Brian, where all this stuff really kinda is that, we're looking for retention ponds. I mean, or if we have anything currently that would, be suitable for this.
My only concern with the retention pond thing in that, none of them are big enough.
I mean, there is some areas,
The kids aren't gonna, no, they aren't gonna like to ride around. There's no retention pond here that they're gonna wanna go do
No,
that. So
but I'm
I
saying
just
for future wise, I mean, we've looked at land that was like 6 or 7 acres, that's more than sufficient, so.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so right now, we have a motion and a second on the floor to direct staff to work with the county to see if the county has anything available. Internally, we can look at if the village has anything available. I just don't know what that would be. I personally, the Conservancies would be out. I just see nothing but total erosion happening on the Conservancies and kids ending up in the water, and you'd have to extract him out of there, chief, like you talked about this morning,
They'll float down.
so.
The one thing we'll have to be careful with stormwater ponds is erosion. If we are making a dirt track, is something that we'd have to focus on. So, you'd have to be on the uppermost berm, not on the actual side slope, because that's kind of a little bit more tender. And of course, with the balance of the water up and down, that ground does obviously get a lot softer. But that's all things that we can look at and take a peek at.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have an open floor too, so.
I'll make a motion to close the floor. I appreciate you guys.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second to close the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Motion carried. Okay, we have a motion and a second to direct staff to see if we can work with the county to find something. Everybody understand? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Motion carried. Okay, thank you. 10H, consider, discuss, act on updates to 5-year strategic plan.
Thank you, Madam President. So nothing formal to do tonight, just kind of want to give you an update on where things left off from the workshop that we conducted a few weeks back with Allison Brunette. Give you a brief update on that. So as you know, we're going through the strategic planning update process. We are in the point of formulating kind of our mission, vision, core values, and long-term goals. We conducted that effort at that workshop. It should be noted that by and large, there wasn't a strong desire to change a lot outside of maybe just kind of changing focus, and you'll see that as part of the presentation. Prior to doing the formulating, though, we did do quite a few inventorying activities. Just want to kind of remind the group that we conducted a community survey where we had a few hundred individuals complete the survey and give us feedback on how our programs and services are perceived. There were 3 focus groups that were held back earlier in the year, gathering valuable qualitative insights from that community feedback survey. We've had an internal staff survey as well conducted, and then obviously have had a couple of different workshops conducted over the last few months to help prepare for that. Just to kind of give you some brief history here, this is our current strategic planning framework, which identifies our mission, vision, and core values and strategic directives. If you recall, we spent a great deal of time at the last workshop really kind of reviewing our mission, vision, our core values, and strategic directives. There was some thought as to making some changes, not necessarily with intent, but kind of word usage and kind of impact. And so you'll see on the next few slides that we've kind of worked internally based on the feedback from those work sessions on revising both our mission, vision, and a few core values, as well as kind of streamlining some of the strategic directives. So one of the things that we did is we updated our vision to be more people-centric. So if you recall, our last vision statement was very subject-oriented, kind of physical in nature. And there was a great deal of conversation about, boy, you know, our vision is kind of the same, but we want to be more inspiring. And so what we did here internally is we came up with a new vision that really puts it more people-centric. And essentially we're going to create Ashwaubenon will be a dynamic community of choice, leading Northeast Wisconsin through opportunity, connection, and belonging. So dynamic, obviously, just being that vibrant community, just another word usage issue there. We felt strongly that community of choice is important. And we wanted it to not only be a community of choice for people to live here, but a community of choice for people to do business, to work here, and then to also be a part of this organization. So we want to be attractive to prospective and current employees. We wanted to identify that we want to lead Northeast Wisconsin. We want to, even though we're certainly smaller than some communities population-wise, we want to be a leader here in Northeast Wisconsin. We want to not only be inspiring to our local community, but inspiring to the greater region. And we wanted to put focus on the people-centric aspects of opportunity, connection, and belonging. So we wanted people to find opportunity here, both as a resident, as a business owner, operator, and as well as an employee. At our workshops, we spent a lot of time about connection and belonging, right? Creating those connections with our community, both from a resident standpoint, but also from a business point of view, but also from our employees' point of view as well. And then connection is just feeling like you can be a part of something. What we wanted to do is really kind of focus on the belonging aspect of it. Is not only do I have opportunities to connect, but I also feel like I have opportunities to be heard and to have my input weigh in the decision-making both externally and internally within the organization. Our mission, we talked about at our workshop. How many of you can repeat our current mission statement? And not many people rose their hand. I think I might have been the only one. And so there was a lot of conversation about changing the mission statement to be something easier to remember and more inspiring. We focused on Simon Sinek's Golden Circle. What's the why behind it? What's our purpose? And we also talked about maybe changing our mission statement to be something that could fit on the back of a t-shirt, right? So our current mission statement is kind of a little bit elongated, a little bit hard to remember. And so we really wanted to focus on that why. And so our mission is really kind of more of a purpose statement. It talks about our contribution and the outcome of our contribution. And so simply put, we said our mission is to serve our community. And why? If we serve our community, it's to strengthen Ashwaubenon. And we look at that from a variety of standpoints. We look at it from a governing body point of view. When you make decisions, is our decision here to help serve our community, and will that decision help strengthen it? For us as employees, we focus on service as well, right? The service we provide is really the only justification for our existence. So we're here to serve the community, and if our service helps strengthen the community, then our contribution has meaning and purpose. And so that is the revised mission. Our values, if you recall, we really kind of kind of were split. We had 6 values before. 3 of the values really kind of were relevant today, but 3 of the values we spent a great deal of time talking on. And I'm going to focus primarily on kind of the 3 values that we had some conversation on. The first one was related to service, and we wanted to put more emphasis on people-centered service. So the services we provide are really intended to focus on the needs of the community, right? The people of the community. And so we kind of retailored the organizing sentence related to the values about being more focused on people-centered service versus just the services themselves. And so what do the people need, what do they want, and how are we going to best service them? And so we made some tangible changes to that. The second one was innovation. If you recall, we had a core value of innovation, and we really struggled with that because it's not that we aren't innovative or don't want to be innovative. The question came about why are we being innovative? And so we really didn't have that purpose of, are we just doing it to be innovative, or are we doing it for a reason? And so we changed the core value of innovation to improvement. So we're really focused on seeking improvement with purpose. Why are we doing that? Are we making those changes for a real valid reason? And is it going to provide value again? Does it help serve the community? Does it help strengthen Ashwaubenon? The last value that we talked about was this value of fun. We really struggled with that. We said, boy, our employees just aren't having the kind of fun we would hope they would have. We talked about going on outings to brewer games and things like that and having more potlucks. And we really kind of struggled with that aspect because I think fun, even though it is somewhat related internally, it doesn't reflect well externally. And so we talked about maybe changing that value to positivity. So we all have meaningful work. The governing body has meaningful work in serving and supporting the community. Our employees have meaningful work. And we recognize that in today's day and age, there may be a lack of incivility, or there's a lack of civility, there's a lot of incivility. And so how can we create an environment where we foster positivity? And so that's, finding meaningful aspects of our work, focusing on the service, and really kind of helping engage and connect and get people to belong into the decision-making, I think will help foster that positivity as well. So we scrapped the word fun. We're really focused on having a positive environment and really engaging with not only our employees, but with the general public. So with that, I'm going to take a brief pause. Let me tackle the directives, and then I'm going to pause for a moment and get some feedback from the board. As part of our workshop, we identified that we really didn't have a need to change any of the 6 strategic directives. However, there may have been a desire to change maybe some of the initiatives and objectives within each of those goal statements. So you'll see that many of these things are relatively the same, but really simplified some of the statements. So the first one is enhancing quality of life. The second one is securing public health and safety. The third is to improve and maintain public infrastructure and facilities. The third is to support community and economic development. The fifth is to strive for organizational and financial excellence. And the sixth is to strengthen community connections and engagement. With the exception of the 6th directive, the 5 prior directives are relatively unchanged. But you'll notice that under the 6th one, we are really focusing on creating those connections and that engagement. We spend a great deal of time about trying to build that network within our community. So again, to kind of pause here, this is our retailored or retooled strategic framework. Our vision, again, is to create a dynamic community of choice, leading Northeast Wisconsin through opportunity, connection, and belonging. Our mission is simply to serve our community, strengthening Ashwaubenon. Our values are service, professionalism, teamwork, accountability, improvement, and positivity. And our 6 strategic directives stay relatively unchanged from our prior plan. And with that, I'll kind of pause and gather some feedback from the board to see if we're kind of connecting those dots or hitting those buttons that you wish to hopefully have achieved based on our workshop that we held a few weeks ago.
Well, I've been through this a couple times, Joel, so.
My feedback on this, and it's a common theme with me, the communication of this to the staff at every level is where the rubber meets the road. I think this is all very good. I like the way it's gotten reworked. I like that we got much more concise because it was way too much, like you said, there was way anybody could consume it before. So I like that it's very concise right now. I mean, the fact that you have all this on one slide now compared to your slide deck you had before.
Well, we'll get more complicated as we go.
Oh, yeah, I know, but once you get to that point, then it's each one of these guys have those things, and then that makes sense that it's down at that level. But this is what needs to be understood by everybody of where we're going to, and I like that it's more concise and everything. So I think it was a very positive change. I like the values because you've got service, professionalism, teamwork, accountability, improvement, positivity. Probably like to see a couple less, but I like every one of them, but less is more in that particular situation. But no, I really do like the change. I like the change. I think it's more concise. I think it's easier to consume it. But again, it's the communication, and that's why we added that strengthening community connections, and that's all about communication. I mean, we have to be able to get this out so that when I talk to the guys, you know, out on the road and that they get this and understand how they fit into this. That to me is where the rubber meets the road. And that's you know, that's what has to happen with it.
Okay, I'll kind of move on. I'll quickly go through again where we're at in the process is we've identified our current draft strategic directives. We're working through the aspect of creating key initiatives and action steps that will go into that. And then at some point when those two items are completed, a final package strategic plan would be presented to the village board for consideration and possible adoption. Some of the things that we've created so far from a draft standpoint is, again, the directive is the goal. The goal statement kind of helps define that directive. The key initiatives are more of the what we're going to do. The how is the action steps. We haven't, again, gotten to the action steps. What I will point out, and I won't go through these word by word or line by line, but what I will point out is that for each directive, we had 1 to up to 6 key initiatives. We're proposing streamlining that to 3 key initiatives per directive. Again, just to simplify it, to capture the key things that are going to be important over the next 5-year period of operating strategy. The one thing that I'll note on directive number 1 for enhancing quality of life, this came from the survey data that we received from not only the survey data, but also from the focus groups, and then furthermore at our workshops, that key initiative of protecting and enhancing our natural environment, including those key environmental sensitive areas and waterways, that was identified as a priority. We need to figure out what that is precisely that our residents want, but we do know that there's a desire to protect and enhance the natural environment in Ashwaubenon. And again, the more work will need to be done to identify that, what that real initiative means. For directive number 2, I just want to kind of point out a couple things that will change briefly from the prior plan. First and foremost, we spent a great deal of time upgrading our equipment and apparatus. I think we need to be more strategic on how we do that. And then we know that we're getting into the next process of looking at what the future facility needs are for the department. So that likely needs to be a high priority for this strategic plan because it's a really resource intensive effort. So Are we building a new station? What will that station hold for equipment? What will that next 30 to 50, 60, 75-year period look like? And are we properly planning for that? That's all going to be priority over the next 5-year period. And then second, I just want to point out that we largely left untackled the village's preparedness planning efforts for disruptive and disaster-related events. So that too will need to continue to be a priority within the next plan. For directive number 3, really kind of trying to consolidate again some of these key aspects. I think in our last plan, we kind of separated things like bicycle, pedestrian accommodations, and other multimodal infrastructure. This plan will wrap that into other infrastructure projects so that it's not separate. There will feel like a consistency in that effort. And then lastly, I just want to touch on the fact that we are going through that process of upgrading facilities, or at least that planning process. So that too is being highlighted here under directive number 3. For community and economic development, not a significant change here, but just adding housing back to 5 years ago was really driven towards senior housing. And now we're really kind of looking at striving and expanding all housing, right? Expanding any quality, diverse housing options throughout our community, and not necessarily focus specifically on the older adult population. That will be a component, but we recognize that housing in general is a priority for the community and for the region. Under number 5, I just want to point out that one of the things that was desired for change as part of the last workshop that we had is it was felt that we did a great job of improving, enhancing, and creating a foundation for a solid, robust human resources program. And now it was time to kind of take that program to the next level and talk about engaging and retaining and developing a sound succession plan within the village. So we've gone from just updating an employee handbook and creating job descriptions to going to that next level of saying, okay, how do we retain, how do we develop our employees, how do we create a solid succession plan? And so that is a key thing. And then beyond that is how do we continue to strengthen and protect the village's financial position. So we're kind of going from foundational aspects of the prior plan and moving into that next realm of improvement. And then finally, for the last element, the strengthen community connections and engagement. I know at the workshop we talked about, to Jay's point, that communication, that connection, that aspect in all of the directives, but we're going to put the emphasis on that effort within directive number 6 and really developing and maintaining those collaborative relationships, not only with other governmental agencies and entities, but all stakeholders and partners that want to engage in their government and be involved in decision-making process. And then you'll see under key initiative number 3 is to develop those community education programs that help prepare and inspire future civic leaders. So we talked about that neighborhood ambassador program. We talked about citizens academies, things of that nature. Those types of programs would fit under that key initiative. So again, that we're preparing for, you know, those people to eventually be on boards, committees, commissions, to run for an elected office. How do we develop that next crop of leadership in our community so that there's buy-in and investment within the community? So with that, you know, this is just a brief update as to kind of where we are as far as the directives, mission, vision, core values, of course, that framework, but also some of those key initiatives. This presentation's in your packet, so you certainly can provide feedback tonight. If you have feedback over the course of several days or weeks, feel free to provide that. Our efforts from a staff perspective are going to take those initiatives and start assigning action items to them, and then we will eventually bring back to the village board for consideration that kind of draft strategic plan. Our hopes are to either do that in June or July of this year, depending again on how much feedback we get between now and that period of time. Ultimately, the goal is to have a strategic plan presented, adopted, and implemented August, September of this year. So with that, I'll take any feedback, comments, or welcome feedback over the next few days or weeks as we continue along the process.
Joel, I like what you did here, and appreciate all the time spent with it, and it looks like we're on the right track with it. Going forward, are there gonna be measurables, that you can, when, you might get together every quarter or something and sit down and go, okay, here were our targets. Did we reach them? And if we did, great. If we didn't, why not? What can we do to improve on those areas? Something to measure that we know we're moving forward with this.
Yeah, we will do something similar to what we've done in the past, and that's this action item report, and we'll try to do that quarterly where we put that as part of the packet within the board agenda. Certainly could be an opportunity for us to also provide that information to the public and community as it relates to that extra engagement. We have a page dedicated on our website that talks through our strategic plan, and so we can create those metrics there as well. But beyond that, as part of the action item report, one of the things that came out of the workshops is not only having, the action item, who's responsible, maybe a % of completion and updates, but in addition to that, what is the intended outcome of that particular action item, and identify that. And then over the course of that 5-year period, as we update it, we can more clearly identify whether or not that outcome has been achieved. And maybe have conversations, because if it hasn't been achieved, and we may feel like we've accomplished 100% of that action item, but the board is looking at it saying, boy, I don't know that we've really hit the outcome that we intended to. Should we adjust or update the strategic plan to reflect a different action item to hopefully achieve that outcome? So more or less the moral of the story is we create this now, but it should be a living document. And whether it's every quarter, every year, the board should be able to go back and say, are we hitting the outcomes that we intended for with that action item? And if not, let's adjust, let's make a change, and let's retool that item next year so that we can hopefully get to that outcome that we want.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, we'll send you our thoughts, Joel, if we have any.
And prayers, please. Thoughts and prayers.
Yes. Okay. Number 11, items for next agenda. If you have anything, give the office a call. Number 12, convene into closed session. During the meeting, the village board of the Village of Ashwaubenon may convene into closed session pursuant to A and B as listed in number 12. I need a motion to go into closed session.
Motion to go into closed session.
Second.
Motion and a second to go into closed session. Voice vote, please.
Trustee Service?
Yes.
Trustee Paul?
Yes.
Trustee Zerbal?
Yes.
Trustee Atkinson?
Yes.
Trustee Krieger?
Yes.
Trustee Talbert? President Karneski?
Yes.